longer. Oops, and there we are.
All right.
The man of the hour has arrived.
Hello. It's Quincy from CoinClubCrypto. How y'all doing?
Hey, Quincy, thanks so much for joining us. We're super excited to have you.
I'm super excited to be here.
Thankful that you're able to join us. Thank you fully for putting this together. I will hand it over to you guys to start things off.
You got enough charge?
Yeah,
sure. So welcome everyone to the XRP community on Clubhouse. Make sure to, just like Chip and Christian said, tweet this out. We need as many people in here as possible because this is going to be a great discussion with a rising star in the crypto space, Quincy Jones. Before I get started with the show, I'm just gonna, run down with the structure of the show. So the first 15 minutes will just be icebreaker questions for Quincy, and then for the next 25 minutes we'll ask him some general questions, and then after that we'll have time for community Q&A. How does that sound to everyone?
sounds awesome.
Awesome. Perfect. That's cool. Yeah. So without further ado, let's get everyone, all the moderators, to introduce themselves really quickly, and then after that I'll ask Quincy to introduce himself and ask some icebreaker questions. So Christian, go ahead.
Hey, what's up, guys? This is Christian, founder of this Clubhouse. Super excited to be here. I'm from New York, and just a guy that wants to see everyone win when it comes to crypto. So let's keep it going.
This is Chip. I am a co-host of the podcast On the Chain, both in podcast form and also on YouTube, and I'm really excited to get to know more about Quincy, who has been everywhere, and I don't know how you do it, but you're in multiple places at one time.
And I'm Lisa Lopez. I'm one of the original mods of the XRP community group, and help to put these things together and do the graphics for each of our events. Big fan of yours and very excited to have you with us.
Thanks. I'm excited.
I am James Rule XRP, the crypto teacher. You can find me on YouTube, James Rule XRP. I'm also on crypto Twitter. Quincy, you've been hot here the past couple of weeks, so thank you for being here with us. We're gonna have some really fun conversation tonight. We appreciate you.
Thanks. I'm really glad to be here. I hope to have a really cool, interesting discussion. Maybe we can really get our brains turning on the future of the technology, and I don't know, maybe we can spread some ideas and talk things through.
Awesome, Quincy. And again, if you haven't done so already, ping as many people as you can if you're down in the audience. And one more reminder, we're going to have questions, leave our questions till the end. So there will be a point in time where everyone could come up to stage and ask questions. But first, Quincy, let's ask you some icebreaker questions. So the first one is, if you could have one superpower, what would you choose?
Teleporting. But it's sort of two superpowers, because if you just teleport, you may just teleport into walls, so you need to have the seeing eye teleporting power, but teleporting hands down, superpower, epic, you can't be touched.
Gotcha, awesome. Next question. Who is your hero?
Who's my hero? I think everyone in this chat already knows.
Let's take a guess. What, David Schwartz?
Simple guess, you got it.
David Schwartz.
Satoshi, right?
Oh, of course.
All right, and the last question I'm going to ask. If you had to describe yourself, because a lot of people don't know who you are, if you had to describe yourself in one word, did you hear me?
Yes. I didn't want to say something because I didn't want that to be the word. I'm trying to think of. I would probably say the one word would be overzealous.
That makes sense. I can see that. You're a busy guy, and that makes sense.
Awesome. So Quincy, let's get right into it. I'm just gonna ask you the first two questions, and then I'll let the other moderators take it from there. So my first question is, what is your background, and why are you passionate about blockchain technology? And just to remind you, Quincy, I think that there's a little bit of feedback coming from you.
There might be. So we'll fix this.
Turn it down.
We'll fix this. Give me half a second. All right, how's that?
Oh, better. Perfect.
Awesome.
All right. Yeah, so what is your background, and why are you passionate about blockchain technology? A lot of people don't know who you are, but they want to know who you are. So it's important for them to understand your background and why you have a passion for blockchain technology.
Yeah, so my background is I'm currently a economics student at Arizona State University, but I've been programming since high school. It's one of those things when I went to college, I actually originally went for computer science, and then I took a look at the classes and I was like, yeah, fuck that, I'd much rather just code. So I was like, I wanted to get into more of like programmatic trading and kind of wanted to get into like high frequency trading. So I was like, why not learn the broader impact of macroeconomics and then be able to apply those that sort of thought process and those type of patterns to and programmatically implement them. And I kind of figured, I was like, well, if I can get the general logic of macro down while being able to code on my own projects, and this has been like an ongoing thing for a while now. So I've had projects forever, and you guys have probably seen a handful of them that have just leaked all over the place, but I've been involved in technology for a really long time. And well, basically, so I go to ASU, I've been coding for a while, and I guess you could say one of the biggest things that kind of got me was around like sophomore year or so. I kind of went full force. Like I was kind of on the ledge of whether I wanted to go more macro or more tech, or which way I wanted to go. But I said, it's not even really said. It was kind of like I had a fascination with some of the technology I was dealing with, and I was kind of like I don't even know how to put it, because I used to game a lot, so modding was like my biggest thing when it came to like programming in a sense. And outside of that, I didn't do anything serious up until I started my first startup sophomore year. And there's probably a bunch of stuff online about it, but it's essentially a digital wallet that will connect all of your payment means through one card. So you can connect your card, your bank account, your debit card, your credit card, your Cash App, your crypto, all your payment means would go through one card. And that kind of like stepped the game for like my hardcore like software development career, because up until then I was kind of just like a light, programmed on my off time. I went out with some friends. I didn't really go anything like hardcore. But after that, I started up my startup, raised a little bit of money, went out for about 8 months until I ran out of money, and my girlfriend made me had to get a real job. She's like, you got to get a job. So I ended up getting a job at a private equity firm, basically being a back-end engineer for cloud infrastructure. And I've been at that job for about 3 years now, primarily working in AWS cloud, and primarily dealing with architecture, automation, and infrastructure as code, which is kind of a new concept. But one of the big things that really got me when it came to blockchain, as opposed to just broader development, was, I guess you could sort of say, I was into crypto, but not really the same way that I am now. So I've bought like Bitcoin and Ethereum before and kind of just traded them around like assets. And I've created a bot. I've created multiple bots. I keep getting asked about this, about Quincy, what about your bots? Trust me, you don't want to babysit a bot. It's not as fun as it sounds. It's not as lucrative as it sounds, and it's scary as hell. So I've had multiple bots monitoring crypto and doing a bunch of things and trying to play that game. But the thing that really got me was I was like, well, one thing is it's one thing to sort of trade these things like they're any other asset, like on any other exchange, like any other security or equity. But it's another thing to really getting into the underlying technology of what makes this technology interesting. And one thing that really got me, that kind of like really like hooked me in like a gateway drug, was everything I was doing in cloud was sort of self-managed. And I realized a lot of the stuff with blockchain is programmatic and it's entirely automated. So I kind of realized that a lot of the back-end structures that I was building every day at my job, I could sort of scale out those infrastructures in blockchain without essentially having to manage those back-end systems myself. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. So now something that would take me like 40 hours could take me like 10 hours because I don't have to deal with the back-end processes. So after that, I went like balls deep, and I went into all the documentations. And actually at this time, I was actually still into Ethereum. I actually went hard into Ethereum programming right off the bat, into Solidity, getting into ECR tokens. And the thing that sort of hit me was just maintaining, like, for me, like, I like to test out a bunch of different features to see what's up, and just running basic tests on some of these platforms became like expensive. And I was like, wow, like this, and this is just me kind of just only looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum at the time. So I was just like, wow, this is quite interesting. I think these technologies are really, sorry about that, my phone's going off. I think these technologies are really innovative, but it seemed silly for me that they had these like really simple like systems flaws that would keep me, it was almost one of those things where I'm like, why would I be on the blockchain if I'm spending more money than I am in the cloud, and I don't really necessarily get the same level of full-on performance. And that was one thing that got me with Bitcoin and Ethereum, is that you don't really get the performance details that a lot of distributed ledger technologies get. But I didn't know this at the time, so I started exploring, and obviously I went down like the first top 10 coins, like saw XRP and Cardano and, you know, all the other coins out there, and I started just diving into their technologies, because that's what I do every day at work. I dive into the SDKs, into the APIs, into their documentation. I go deep into whatever project we're going to do. So I figured, oh, why not? And one of the things that was interesting was that payment need for my startup that I had would kind of became more and more clear once I realized I could execute that payment with crypto as opposed to execute that payment through, I was really just setting up a series of wire payments on a back-end system as opposed to creating a decentralized system with a potential payment mechanism and potential off-chain payment mechanism. And once I realized that was the case with some of these technologies, I was like so hooked. It was one of those things where I was like, wow, you're telling me I could create an application that already has a bunch of scaling and a bunch of performance needs already cooked into it, and I'm able to essentially build off of this like essentially for free because it's open source, and I don't have to sit here and figure out the thought processes of trying to hook up multiple different banking wireframes. Like, it was a lot of things just kind of like leveled themselves out. So after that, like I went deep into XRP at first, mostly because of just a lot of the things I saw that you could do with it. But then I ended up getting into XLM, Algorand, XDC. I looked at a couple other coins too, and my biggest thing was I was trying to figure out, well, one, what could I do for my own personal projects, but two, how can I also enter the space in such a manner to where I could get a better paying job, obviously, than just doing back end like cloud infrastructure. And I kind of figured, I'm like, well, if there's kind of a supply constraint of like smart contract developers or blockchain developers, I figured like it should be kind of easy to get a job, and it's actually kind of crazy the amount of blockchain jobs that are popping up. But that's the thing, like I thought it would be easy to get a job, so I was like, fuck it, like I already learned a lot of these. I spent like the past 2 years at the time learning nothing but cloud technology. So after that I was like, I've spent 2 years learning cloud. What's another year or so diving into crypto? So I ended up spending like the past like year and a half just diving into just different crypto projects, and I started diving into the documentations and their SDKs. I started using them as part of my some of the builds of some of the applications I was building, and then I started like proposing to my job and telling them like, hey, we deal with a lot of lending and finance. There's a way that we can create a series of automated processes to also execute this too. And one of the biggest things that they thought was great, because we're kind of in the middle of a tech transfer from an old traditional system to the cloud system, and we've been in this tech transfer forever. So it's one of those things where if you can show them more automation, like their ears perk up and go, oh, that saves us money, that saves us time, and we've been in this process forever, so how can we do this? So I started kind of talking with my job for a little bit and sort of like kind of getting them in on not really crypto as a whole, but really getting them on the idea of exploring new technologies that could help them with their enterprise needs. And from my standpoint, it was kind of all experimental, but what we were doing anyway was entirely experimental. Like there's no like one way to do a tech transfer from a traditional database to the cloud. But I figured like if we're going to do this anyway, we might as well do it in the best possible way we could. So one of the first things I told them, and I was like, hey, look, like we could potentially use XRP as an internal settlement token, or we could potentially use XDC and Corda as an internal settlement platform with a series of automations on it. And like it was one of those things where after I've spent like so many months dove into the technology, I've kind of like pitched my job on being able to adopt these. It kind of just turned into this thing where I was currently certified on AWS, and I was actually I'm currently in the middle of getting certified on Corda, and that's hence the working on Corda so long, and also working on Daml too. But so I'm over here trying to figure out like, okay, like like, I got my job and we are trying to move over to this new tech transfer, and I'm convincing them that, yeah, cloud's cool, but we could definitely use some of these blockchain technologies. These are also cool, especially for finance and lending. And it was just one of those things where at this point I was just so deep into it. I probably spent like 6 hours a day staring at the documentation, going over every single function of every single blockchain that I was interested in, solely based off the fact that I'm looking for one, I'm trying to convince my job and everybody that I'm working with that these technologies are the way to go as opposed to the traditional route that we're going. But also my own applications, I'm trying to figure out how I can automate my own applications in such a manner that I don't have to essentially have an entire back-end team of engineers to scale this globally. And that's kind of the biggest thing that people that separates cloud from crypto, is in order to scale an application globally, you really need a bunch of engineers to maintain the servers and maintain the computational units. But with blockchain, it really does just scales on demand globally, solely based off the people that are executing the contract that's being put into question. So I was like, wow, this is freaking awesome. This saves me, and like, this may sound like a bunch of mumbo jumbo to you guys, but for me, I'm like, this saves me so much time. I spend so much time dealing with these back-end architectures, and these things break all the time, and these things are annoying to handle, and anything can happen at any time. And if this means that you can essentially have this entirely automated on an entirely decentralized network in which other people can manage their own nodes and you don't have to worry about the back-end systems, I'm like, fuck yeah. So I was kind of already up, and this might have been like, at this point, this might have been like early November this year. I've kind of just been so into it, and I was talking about it forever, and it's kind of this weird morphous of, I got into the tech because of curiosity, but I fell in love with the tech because of its use case. And kind of just there, I've started getting my job actually implementing some of the Corda applications that we're trying to. I'm currently working on my own backend applications for my own startups. And kind of just this past like week or so, this month, I normally talk about tech all day, every day to everybody, my coworkers, my friends, my family, everybody. So kind of when this past week or so, when I went on, and the only reason, and this is actually kind of interesting, the only reason I went on Matty G's channel was because I was sitting at my desk kind of bored, and I saw his like notification popped up, clicked on his video, sitting in the comments, and I was like, you know what, I work on these systems, what the hell? Like, what if I just went on there and just say, hey, you guys can do so much shit with this stuff, this is what we're doing now, what the hell, why not? And I had no idea that this would spread like wildfire, like not in a million years. It was just one of those things where, like, this is something I deal with every day, I work on it every day, I talk about it every day, and it's one of those things where I'm the only one in my space. I mean, don't get me wrong, there are plenty of like finance people that are also trying to get into blockchain development and trying to figure out institutional needs, but I was like the only like primary developer at my job outside of some outsourced contractors that we had. So it's one of those things where I kind of just felt like I'm constantly just barking over and over and over again all these special features and all these, and most of that is just to get people just into the technology. And obviously I'm telling you like, hey, you know, maybe you want to get into this coin, or maybe you want to do this. It's just barking up a storm. And I guess me barking up a storm, barking at the wrong person, caused me to go viral or something, and now everybody watches me bark every day on my YouTube channel.
Quincy, I'm loving it. You're going in. You're really going in right now, and we appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not pinging as many people as you can, I don't know what the hell you're doing, because this is such a valuable conversation that we're having with Quincy. But Quincy, I wanted to interrupt you. You were going in, and you've touched on so many things. I wanted to sort of rewind when you talked about XRP, basically your research. You talked about XRP, and you mentioned XRP, XDC, XLM, Algorand. Those are, as far as we know, the ISO 20022 compliant cryptocurrencies. My next question is, before I hand it off to Christian and Chip, my next question is, why is ISO 20022 important to you? And why are those specific cryptocurrencies important to you? And why should the listeners care about those cryptocurrencies?
Okay, cool. So before I even get into ISO, let's just totally remove the cryptos out of it for 1 second, just so we can get an isolated idea of what the hell ISO is. Because people like to pair ISO with the ISO coins, which makes sense, but we want to look at ISO like just as a policy position by the banks right now. Let's not even look at the payment means. Let's not even look at the payment, parties. Let's not look at any of that. Let's just look at the overall concept of creating a universal payment messaging system or whatever that may be. So ISO's been in the works for a really long time. And I'm pretty sure it's been in the works ever since 2004, and it's seriously been in the works since around 2013. And I'm pretty sure the migration for ISO for a lot of European countries started in 2017, 2018, and there's a bit of an ongoing migration with the Americas and basically everybody else that hasn't gone on to the ISO between now and 2023. So why is ISO important? Well, ISO simply, and the ISO 20022 isn't the only ISO standard, it's just the newest one. So previous ISO standards were also universal standards when it came to well, not even quite digital banking, but primarily just banking as a whole. You can put digital banking in there, but just banking as a whole. And all that meant was if I was a bank and you were a bank and we both operated on the same standard, we wouldn't have to necessarily worry about the compatibility of our messages coming in contact with each other. And it may not seem like a big deal on a small scale, but when you're talking about billions of dollars, it could be a serious problem if you can't accept a payment right away because your systems aren't able to read it correctly. And obviously it becomes an exponential problem the more errors that you end up having in the system. So ISO's been like this ISO standard's been around a long time, and it's just been revised over the years. So we had a previous ISO standard where Swift primarily was the dominant party in that standard. I forgot what the number was, but Swift was primarily the dominant party, and now we're moving over to 20022. Now what's 20022? Well, 20022 is simply just the most modern payment standard for digital payments that abide by certain standards today. So all that really is and this is, like I said, this is an ongoing thing. So the IMF, the Federal Reserve, all of the banks getting together, all of this is just basically them going, hey, we want to do business with you, but we don't want things to be kind of confusing and inconsistent. We want a level of consistency. So they created, and this thing, it's not even that they created the ISO, they created another layer of the ISO for the more modern payment methods, and this essentially rendition of ISO is essentially the global standard for all banks to accept any sort of payment from any other bank. Now, this doesn't mean they can't accept ISO or something that's not ISO. This just means that there's no guarantee that the bank that you're sending this payment to can accept it if it's not ISO. So maybe they can, maybe they can't, but there's no guarantee, where with ISO there is. So why is this overall important to the ISO coins? Well, all ISO is a payment messaging structure or syntax, and all that is basically saying that when they receive a message, and I'm pretty sure they receive the message in XML, when they receive the message, they're able to read it in a standardized format to where they don't necessarily have to have discrepancies or anything really off with the payment. So what happens with the ISO coins is they're built within the structure to accept the messaging payment system of ISO, and this is important because, well, the banks operate on the standard. So there's no guarantee that if your asset, whatever it may be, isn't ISO, that it wouldn't be accepted by the banks. It would be a big maybe of whether or not it's accepted, and that big maybe becomes a shrinking maybe, because over time, I'm pretty sure by 2023, anybody that's not on the ISO system won't be entirely locked out, but they will be incredibly limited to the amount of parties they can interact with, solely because they don't have that standard that's globally recognized. So what the ISO coins are, they're basically a series of payment tools that abide by this global standard that's being put into place by the international banks.
Hey, Quincy.
Yes.
You have so much great information, and I know we have several more questions here, and we want to be respectful of your time, and there's a lot of people in the audience, I think, that have questions too. So I want to just try to move on to some of these questions. So, Foley, did you have some more as well, or did you want to open it to James or Lala?
No. I'll let everyone else get a question in, and then after that, we'll start bringing people up to the stage.
Okay, and Quincy, I don't need that long of an answer, just so we can get to some of the other questions and move on to the audience. But a lot of us XRP holders are excited about the Flare network that's coming live soon. Do you have any thoughts on Flare for us?
Yeah, I think Flare is an interesting technology. I think one thing that Flare is going to be able to do and I think everybody sort of already knows this when it comes to XRP, but just being able to add a level of interoperability, not only with XRP, but all other assets that can be considered F assets, and then being able to provide automated liquidity to illiquid markets that may reside on not only Flare but also XRP and other networks that may be comparable. And you can essentially create a series of automated systems on top of the XRP ledger and other ledgers that interoperate with Flare. Now, the only thing I kind of do have with Flare, and this is just a me thing, but it's still like in beta, so it's one of those things where we don't really know the full capability of it until it's live. And I have a lot of faith in the technology as a whole, but it's one of those things where I can't give a full fair judgment on where I think it's going to go until I can get my hands dirty with its capabilities and compare it to other technologies.
I have a question for you, and it's a big one because, you know, this is the XRP community. We always talk about XRP and all the money. Do you see all the money running on the XRP ledger? And I'm talking about derivatives, real estate, stocks, gold. I mean, you know, everything running on the XRP ledger.
So I think all the money is a huge statement to make. Let's say most of the money. But I do believe XRP is going to be used primarily as a liquidity token, especially among the banks. And this liquidity token will essentially be the primary settlement token among banks, being XRP. But the real question is it all the money? And the real question with that is, well, what are we doing with this money? And the reason I'm asking this is there are a lot of other platforms that do a lot of other things, and I'm not saying XRP really has anything to worry about with these other platforms. What I'm saying is I think a lot of these other platforms may have their finger in the pie, even though XRP may have the biggest slice. You see what I mean?
100%. Yeah, I appreciate that feedback because, you know, there's so many use case, and I'm only invested in use case cryptos, and I try to teach that to many of the new people coming in, you know, to really go in and research these ecosystems, but before you invest in it, to really learn, you know, what these companies are doing with these blockchain technologies and why these cryptos were created. So, yeah, I appreciate that feedback, brother.
Oh, thanks.
All right, we'll move on to Lala. Lala, do you have any questions?
I give my time.
All right, move on to Chip.
Hey, Quincy, Chip here. Just curious to get your take on the future. Let's look future-wise. I mean, with XRP, you know, NFT was the big thing early 2020. It kind of was its breakout year, even though it's been around for a little bit. What do you see going into 2022? What do you see like the next big thing inside of blockchain, right? So we've got DeFi, that's obviously here. We've got NFTs, but what do you think the future is going to unfold over the next 2-3 years?
See, one of those things is like the next big thing and the next, I don't even know how to put it, because there definitely seems to be these frenzies people are in, especially when it comes to NFTs. And I don't know if you could call it the next big thing because it's a frenzy, or the next big thing because it's popular. But in my opinion, something that would be the next big thing, not necessarily because I think it would be also popular, but because I think it's going to be so functionally useful that it may become essentially the standard among corporations. And I think the next big thing is going to be interoperable decentralized applications. And it doesn't even sound like all like, you know, glitz and glams and beautiful and all, you know, like, oh man, a bunch of interoperable decentralized smart contracts. Like, how is that, you know, how is that amazing? Well, what I think is going to end up happening is the same way that you saw, and I'm going to correlate this to cloud, the same way that you saw like apps like Airbnb and Uber be able to scale worldwide because they're able to institute their applications in the cloud and they're able to spin up servers anywhere in the world in the cloud. I think you're going to see that the same exact sort of expansion in regards to smart contracts, but I think you're going to see a level of interoperability, and I think you're going to see a level of you're going to see almost like an interledger piece that's going to connect a lot of these decentralized applications together. And the reason why this is so important is I think you're going to see a huge huge. It's like I said, in terms of the next big thing, this is more of the next big wave of tech companies to come out, as opposed to the next big wave of people to sell, an NFT or something, or ICO or whatever it may be. But I think what's going to happen with that is people can essentially build upon bigger applications without having to build that ground floor, and those bigger applications can benefit off of people building off of them, because people can execute their smart contracts and they can essentially have a revenue source fully based off of people executing off of their infrastructure that they're already using. So what ends up happening is you end up having these overlying integrated infrastructures that are going to constantly be executing off of each other programmatically, automatically over and over and over and over again. And I think it's going to cause a ridiculous feedback loop that may cause like the next wave of like Silicon Valley billionaires in a sense. And it's all going to be centered around decentralized applications that can be scaled worldwide on demand, and it can essentially be managed worldwide. What's it called? Is it DAI applications, decentralized? I forgot what it was called. It was like decentralized corporations in a sense. But I think what you're gonna end up seeing is you're gonna see
DAO, right?
Yeah, DAO. That's what it was. That's what it was.
You have multiple owners, and everybody takes part. You don't have one decision maker.
I think that's what's going to be the next big thing. And the reason I say that is because what happens is you have resources meet opportunity, and what happens is people with resources are going to have access to the biggest pool of opportunity because they have access to anybody in the world that can essentially communicate with them. So it could be something very, 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 very simple. And you kind of see this already with the remote work popping up. People already sort of see this now with, and it's actually kind of funny because I actually just got a new job that's a remote job, and you see this now with people working remote. But what happens when you're able to work remote on a decentralized application with a bunch of other people that are working remote on that decentralized application all over the world in such a manner that's almost frictionless, and you're able to do that with maximum performance and maximum efficiency without having to at the same time also being cheaper, because you don't have to essentially manage all of that back-end infrastructure, because that infrastructure is on the blockchain itself. It's almost like it's a decentralized back-end structure that's being managed by a bunch of independent nodes that are all occupying on the same network.
That's amazing. Hey, curiosity, did that job come through a community of kind, or was it just somebody seeked you?
Oh, you're gonna love.
I can answer that. Then I got one follow-up last question.
You're gonna love this. So I actually got recruited 2 days before I went viral.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
And then after I went viral, I got like 20 job offers since.
I would imagine that that's what I was thinking. You'd probably blow up just in light of how you've been viral recently. Hey, what's your thought on HBAR, Hedera Hashgraph? Has a lot of similar principles as far as fast transfer speeds and everything. Playing in a little bit of a different niche, but what are your thoughts on that token?
So I'm actually not incredibly familiar with HBAR, but I would love you guys to educate me real quick on HBAR and some of its features.
No, this is your time. We'll look into it another time. I'm just curious. It kind of fits into that, some of the coins you mentioned, but love to hear your thoughts in the future about that. I'll pass it over to someone else.
I've been asked a million times about HBAR, and I've looked a little bit, but I haven't really like dove in. So I don't really have any really strong opinions about HBAR. But I definitely want to look into it just because of what everyone's had to say, and I'm always interested in new technology with new functions and features.
All right, Christian, you have some thoughts?
Quincy, man, it's a pleasure to have you with us here. I'm super excited about the future of blockchain technology. Man, I think it's safe to say this is pretty early, but when do you think we'll see mass adoption of blockchain at a global level, right? I mean, for me personally, I look back at the development of the internet and standards, and I'm a former Apple employee from way back when, and I remember right after the first iPhone launched, then they had the iPhone 3G, 3GS. Long story short, now we're up to like the 12 Max, and we have standards like 5G, right, ultra wideband and whatnot, and I mean, it's night and day in comparison to just how technology has developed. So when we're talking about blockchain being implemented, because they're saying everything's going to run on the blockchain, right? This is the internet of value, the internet 2.0, if you want to call it that. So when do you see that being everywhere? Every company, just kind of like running on blockchain. Are we close? Are we like super early and it's going to be a bit of a wait? I just want to hear your opinion on that.
So yeah, actually, my biggest opinion on that is I think everything has to do, and I'll explain why this is the case too. I think everything has to do with the new economic policies that have to be forged to basically bring a certain level of clarity to how you manage securities and equities on these platforms. So it has nothing to do with the technology itself. It has everything to do with the management of those securities and the regulatory framework of how you would manage those securities, just as you would as like any other sort of financial instrument, but also being able to list these on essentially an internet protocol that can have access to anybody in the world. And the reason why this is important is there's certain, and this is the reason why I'm bringing this up, and don't go directly to the Ripple lawsuit, because this is not anything that has to do with the Ripple lawsuit. What I'm talking about is a series of economic policies either put out by, I don't know, the Federal Reserve or the Treasury or whatever, some form of economic policy bringing some form of clarity of how you manage not the crypto assets themselves, although yes, you will see some form of clarity about those themselves. But even if you did, you're not going to see any of the prices move until certain firms and there's some form of clarity on how the current traditional financial system can manage their equities, securities, treasuries, all those on these networks because of the global implications. And the reason why I say this is at our firm, we talk all day and night about tokenizing securities and equities and how we could do this and how we could do that and we could do all this stuff. And then at the end of the conversation, we go, that's going to be a regulatory nightmare. Oh yeah, dude. Oh my God. Like, we got to get lawyers and freaking, we got to, like, it always ends like that. And it really is, because there really is no clear, and don't get me wrong, it doesn't mean there aren't like firms and institutions out there that are trying. I guarantee you they probably have a huge a team of lawyers on their hand to make sure that they don't try to cross any lines. But for the most part, a lot of institutions don't really see the need to run the risk of falling into a regulatory trap if, one, whatever they're doing is already being able to do what it's basically able to do, but two, there really is no need because everybody that they're operating with is currently operating off the old system. So it's sort of like this slow spin up I think you're going to see solely based off of a series of announcements made in terms of economic policy based around how we manage these type of assets. Not the crypto assets, but the underlying assets like stocks, bonds, derivatives, commodities, whatever it may be, treasuries. And that level of clarity right there, in my opinion, it's not going to make some huge. I mean, it depends on how they go about this, but it's going to be a slow process. These things are always are. But I think you're going to see essentially demand build solely based off of the type of clarity that you would have on managing these type of networks and managing traditional financial assets on these type of networks. Because that's something too you got to remember, and I bet everybody's already familiar with this, but nobody here wants another Tether, and I guarantee you that the people that actually run these regulatory agencies don't want another Tether, and that's why it's very, 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 very important to be able to make sure that you're able to maintain. That's these are global protocols, so you got to remember, like, sure, you may be able to have some sort of regulatory clarity here, but what happens if Apple's operating here and they go, oh, maybe it's easier for us to operate a little bit more in Ireland, even though they're still able to do the exact same thing they're able to do. What's the legal clarity on that if you're operating on a global network? You see what I mean? So and that's the thing. I think there actually may be a global cooperation put into play, because I think that's the only way to go about it. If there's some sort of global cooperation for how businesses and governments interact with each other on these global networks, I think that's the only real way you could get the maximum amount of demand on a global scale to see the type of growth that everybody in this chat would love to see. Other than that, I think we're going to see a lot of the short term, and don't get me wrong, you'll see some good moves, but I don't think you're going to really see the overall adoption curve until you get that overall regulatory clarity based off of how you issue those underlying assets and how you're able to manage them on these global platforms.
Hey, Quincy, so I think we have one last question as our moderator group, and then I think Bowie is going to bring some people up to the stage for their questions. So while he's bringing people up to the stage, our last question is, there's been a lot of speculation about the future of XRP retail holders, given the lawsuit, given the plans that Ripple has as an enterprise play and not necessarily a retail play. So there is a little bit of a concern among retail holders that there might be a bank buyback of some sort, or I don't know if you have any thoughts about that to share.
I do not think there's going to be a bank buyback. I mean, unless you're talking about a bank buyback of the escrow, then I could see something like that, mostly because it's easy to do because it's all in one place. But in terms of pulling...
specifically, a retail investment. What is there a potential that retailers will be precluded from owning XRP at some point?
So I don't think you'll ever.
That's just a concern that I think I've seen, and if you can speak to that.
I don't think you'll be kept from owning XRP. I think you'll be kept from buying XRP. And the difference is it's not illegal to own it. It's just illegal to. It's essentially you're not licensed to buy it. That's essentially how I see things are going to be in the future. And mostly because the only reason I say this and I want everybody to sort of like take a step back and just think of things almost like a banker for a second. Now, if you're a banker and you're using XRP for international trade, the last thing you would want are a bunch of retail speculators coming in and creating a bunch of speculative bubbles, causing the price to go all over the place. So if I had $10, and let's say this $10 wasn't really $10, it was $10 billion, but let's break it down to $10. If I had $10 and I was sending that $10 to another bank, and that $10 was one XRP as a representation of value, well, what happens if the price goes from $10 to $15? That's great, whatever, I'm still able to conduct my trade, but if I have this insane volatility solely based off of retailers' speculation, I could have the price go up, down, left, right, all over the place, in which it would be hard for me to do, conduct trade. So I think there'd be a lot of incentives, I guess you could say, for there to be barriers for retail to buy, not own. If you own it, I don't think they're gonna care, but to buy it, because buying can essentially create speculative frenzies that can create bubbles. That's not good for trade. So that's something to be worried about, and it's only a really incentive piece because, like I said, if I was operating international trade, why the hell would I want retail speculators messing up my my trade medium by creating bubbles in it and essentially not creating a reliable mechanism of value to trade with? And it's one of those things where there's no guarantee that that's the case, but it's a concern of mine because that's exactly what I would be thinking. I'm like, well, like why? And that's the thing. This could be a completely non-issue because the other alternative to this is either the price moves to a point where the volatility is so low that no matter what speculative price bubble, the volatility doesn't affect global trade, which is totally a possibility, or you could just essentially need a license like you would need any other, or essentially you would need a license like you would need for other type of financial instruments, and then you could, it depends on how you wanted to classify that license. It could be some sort of equity or securities license, it could be some new cryptos license, it could be some sort of certification that organizations need to hold in order to manage things, it could be some sort of bank regulation, it can be whatever, but the biggest thing is it's just barriers to entry, and creating barriers to entry basically leaves out people that would otherwise create speculative bubbles while maintaining the people that...
How about the barrier to exit? So we talked about buying. Will we be able to sell, yes or no? And then I'm going to pass the mic to Rob.
So yeah, I think you'll be able to sell, and the reason I say that is because you need a license to buy. I don't think you need a license to sell. So you can sell it to someone who has a license to buy, but I don't think you'll be able to buy it back, and that's something to be cautious of. I mean, this is just the United States, so obviously if you go anywhere in the world and they have their regulations, I don't think it'd be impossible for someone to get their hands on XRP. But I think that's something you got to also remember, because if you're a United States citizen and there's special rules about owning XRP and you own XRP, even though you got it from another country, I think they'll still come after you for special regulatory whatever, however that may be set up. These are just things that you take into consideration. I don't think this is actually the case, but it's something to really think about. And I don't think, like I said, I don't think people are going to have their XRP bought back and taken from them. I definitely think there are going to be a bunch of barriers put in place to help subside a lot of the speculation going on into these markets.
Thanks, Bully, and all of the moderators. Really appreciate all of you, Chip, James, Lisa, Christian, Bully. Quincy, you are an awesome young man. I want to just tell you first and foremost, I've had a wonderful time jumping in the rabbit hole that is all of the stuff you put on YouTube and everywhere I can find you being interviewed. So thanks a lot. I really appreciate the breath of fresh air when you're bringing to me. And I'll buy your milk derivatives as soon as you're offering them.
Awesome.
Question. I'm really a big fan of yours, so keep up the good work and don't lose your energy.
Thanks.
My question is risk. Where do you see the risk for the community going forward? So we talked about regulatory risk. We talked about some of the challenges of getting global communities to jump on standards. But where do you see the risk coming from the traditional finance, the traditional finance markets? I look at my banker and I look at my Charles Schwab guy and, I don't work with Charles Schwab, but Edward Jones, and I just kind of I chuckle at them right now. Where do you think they're going to get hit first? Where's the risk coming from that financial market? From your macro perspective. And I'll mute from here. And again, thanks so much. I'm really appreciative of you joining the community.
Yeah, thanks. In terms of risk, and in terms of risk for the members in the community, so we've gone over regulatory risk. I think one thing to take into consideration is tax risk, and this goes over for all of crypto. And the real question would really be, are you allowed to pay your taxes in crypto, or do you have to liquidate them? And I think that's a huge risk, because I think the difference between having to pay your assets or pay your taxes in crypto and liquidating to pay them in crypto has an entirely different impact on the retail trader. Now, if you're able to pay it in crypto, I don't think you'll see any sort of real market moves, or up, down, left, right, whatever it may be, because people can obviously factor this in based off of their profits just like they would in dollars. But if they have to liquidate their assets in order to go pay their taxes, and this all has to do with economic policy. This is why I said this at the beginning. Economic policy dictates everything in this space, but obviously it's not as sexy and glamorous as the moon boys on Twitter. And I totally get that. But at the same time, it's gonna be that really kicks things off. But yeah, that risk of how are taxes treated among crypto and how are profits treated among crypto, and it's a big blue question mark, because it could be sort of a non-issue and it can totally be integrated into our payment system, and we could treat it like we do dollars, just in whatever the value amount is, or it could be treated entirely different, in which you essentially have to liquidate it, and maybe not even liquidate it. You may have to what's it called? Basically, they'll tax the shit out of it. They'll tax your trading, they'll tax your selling, they'll tax the shit out of it. And there's a risk to be taken into account, because that can have certain effects on the market based off of people liquidating their assets to pay those taxes, and people essentially paying more than they otherwise would need to pay those taxes, based on whatever taxes they may put into play. Now, I don't think this is the end of the world. It's more of the classic, oh no, what are they going to do about taxes and how am I going to deal with it type of question, because yeah, it's something that's going to come up, and I don't think it's as dire as people may think it is, but it's something you definitely need to be careful of, mostly because doing your taxes wrong is not good for you anyway. So doing your taxes wrong in terms of crypto is doubly not good for you. So that's something I think everybody in the chat and everybody listening should definitely be very wary of. And don't just listen to me about taxes. Go find a tax guy or something, and he'll fill you in on whatever you need to know. But the
Actually, if I could interject, Lala put together some great resources for rooms like this about tax and crypto, and we had one earlier today that was fantastic with Clinton Donnelly. So I understand she'll be putting on some more. So anyone in the audience that's interested in crypto taxes, please follow Lala to see when her next rooms are.
Oh, cool.
Thanks, Quincy.
And we should move things along.
Sorry, Lisa. And Quincy, if you are looking for seed capital or angel round stuff again in the future, don't forget to talk to this community. There's several of us out there that like you bet on the jockey, not on the horse.
That's funny. Wow. Yeah. So does that mean I should drop my white paper?
My startup. Watch it for my startup. Hey, so Jeff, I think you're next, and we have several people actually with their hands up too.
Thank you, Rob.
Try to move through them. Yeah. So go ahead, Jeff.
Awesome. Yes, sir. Thanks. Well, this is my first time here, and I have to say that I'm impressed with how much interest the XRP community has. I've been invested in XRP for a while. I come from a banking background, so I come from the traditional finance side. Getting into cryptocurrency is definitely an exciting thing for many people, myself included. And Quincy, I just want to say to you, man, I'm really impressed with your knowledge and how detailed you are in terms of your analysis of a lot of this stuff. And keep doing what you're doing, man. You're really inspiring a lot of people, and you're doing a good thing, educating people and helping us get inundated to what's going on in the community. It's exciting times, and I'm glad to be alive at this time in history. My question for you is, I wanted to know if you were, you talked about, I listened to some of your videos, you talked about Zenfin and how it's used. coming from the traditional finance side, I know that's something that they use. The legacy systems are using that a lot. I wanted to know what's your, it is because you've had a deep dive into it. Is this something that entrepreneurs can use? Are you required to use? Because I know it's a hybrid blockchain, but are you required to have a node in order to utilize it? What's the functionality from it, and what's the usability of Zenfin for entrepreneurs? If you could give me a little bit of information about that, I appreciate it.
Yeah, so the one thing that I love about Zenfin as a whole is the hybrid layer, and it's that public-private layer of the decentralized ledger that essentially allows you to pick and choose who you're able to share your data with, while at the same time being able to broadcast public ledgers based off of, just like you would any other blockchain. So in terms of an entrepreneurial standpoint, and I'm just going to assume you're like, more of an independent entrepreneur as opposed to the Elon Musk type, but
Exactly. Not quite Elon Musk.
But for something like that, and something that I love, and I stated this at the beginning, and it's something that not everyone needs to be a developer to really benefit from a lot of these perks, but it's that scalability of your application. So let's say you're an entrepreneur and you want to make a basic app or whatever, right? And let's say this app was some form of travel app that could help people, find cheaper prices for some mode of travel or whatever it may be, right? And you need this app to potentially scale globally, but you need the app to only primarily work on one node right now, just for one, so you can test it. One thing that I really like about Zenfin is because you have that private-public relationship, and because you're able to scale it on a decentralized platform, you can essentially build an application entirely privately, test it, and then move it over publicly, just like you would a public application, without essentially making the entire application out in the open. Like, you don't have to essentially launch a full-on ICO to get an application out there. You could have it privately hosted, not quite entirely private because you're operating on a decentralized network, but nobody has access to your data but you, and you can essentially operate your application in the manner that you would like to. And that's the thing. So what I like to say before about being able to scale it is you would essentially be able to use that same broadcast system to the overall network and be able to scale your application on demand, assuming that your application was built on a series of smart contracts and dApps as opposed to a traditional architecture. But you'll be able to scale your application on demand without essentially having to linearly scale your not quite your development team, but your overall operations team. Like this, everything that you do to automate something entirely does somebody's job. It's somewhere in the chain. So one thing that's really great with blockchain as a whole, especially for entrepreneurship, is you can really lock into automation and scaling. It's almost like the what's that? Let's say you had an idea for like drop shipping or whatever, right? And you wanted to make sure that you had a decentralized application that could read a bunch of streams of data from a bunch of different stores or a bunch of different ads or whatever to try to get your leads to try to pitch what certain drop shipping toys that you're gonna sell. And let's say you wanted to be able to scale this to every country in the world and to anybody that's operating on that country. Well, instead of essentially setting up a bunch of servers all over the place, you could essentially set up what I like to call a contract book of smart contracts that can all be interoperable with each other, and they can all essentially execute on the network and scale as need be without you essentially needing to scale with it, basically giving you an instant it gives you essentially all the functionality of a back-end process that's an auto scaling back-end process without you essentially having to lift a finger.
Okay, man, that's awesome, man. I appreciate that feedback. You mentioned something, and I know I'm coming from a traditional finance background. They're right now what they've done in terms of technology. Automation is taking over everything. Of course, they use something called robo advisors. So they automate advising the clients on the institutional side, institutional investors and stuff like that, and they're bringing it more into retail. And the reason why I'm asking is because I'm interested in the possibility of integrating that element in with the smart contract element. So, not only is it an automated aspect to it, but the smart contract element, executes the contracts without any human involvement. And and it really frees up a lot of things for people on the retail side, retail investors, because they don't have to pay those high fees, and the fees are really minimized, and it really gives people the ability to dive into investments while having the power of the institutional like investment analysis tools and data analytics and all that, kind of thing. So it's pretty cool, man. I really appreciate your feedback. I won't take up any more of your time. Keep doing what you're doing. You're awesome, bro. And I look forward to hearing more from you.
Thanks, I appreciate it. Nice hearing your question. Nice hearing your perspective too.
And, we apologize. We won't be able to get through everyone. We want to respect Quincy's time. Thank you, Jeff, for that amazing question. We're going to go to Raj to ask the last question. Again, Quincy, thank you for interacting with the community here. We appreciate you, Raj.
Hey, what's going on? Thank you, Quincy, for being here. I appreciate you. Thank you, Mod Squad, for setting it up. I'm just going to be quick to be respectful of your time. I just wanted to know, as a developer, what do you think about Masternodes right now, like as a passive stream of income, and which one do you like if you have a choice?
I guess everybody knows my choice. I'd probably take the XDC Masternode, but I think Masternodes are probably the safest way to really go about primarily staking your assets and managing a node on the network without essentially subjugating yourself to that external risk of somebody else managing and losing your assets. So I think it's great. I think it's probably, in my opinion, one of the best ways to go around and create passive income in the space, assuming you have the capability of creating a masternode and managing that masternode and properly accommodating that masternode. But yeah, I think it'd be awesome if you have the capability of doing so, the resources to do so, the time to do so, and the energy and the will to. Yeah, it's great. It's absolutely great. And if I had enough, I totally would. I totally would set up a masternode. What was that?
Sorry, do we have any? I was just wondering if we have time for a little bit more. Questions. We have several people. I'm sorry that we're trying to get to. Were you finished?
Tell me.
Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead.
Hey, I'm good if it takes a little longer.
Thank you, Quincy.
You don't have to be too. I love answering these questions. I love being a part of the community here. So.
And we appreciate it so much. Bully, can we get maybe XRP next?
Yeah. We'll get XRP.
Okay.
Hey, what's up, guys? XRP Fabian. I want to thank you all for bringing me up on stage. Quincy, you're awesome. I've been following you ever since you've launched out of nowhere. My question is real simple, and I'll keep it super short so that we can get to the people. You were talking about taxes and, about being able to sell and whatever about your assets. My question is this. Do you really think it will be necessary to sell your assets based on the fact that the IRS already kind of considers cryptocurrency to be a property? So wouldn't you be able to just borrow against your crypto as if it was a collateral?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that, because my answer to that is I hope so. I absolutely hope so. It's just one of those things where, like I said, the economic policies could very easily come up, 6 months from now, a year from now, and they could say, just like you guys see with the SEC lawsuit, like the whole idea that Ripple's kind of been doing what they can to kind of be in the clean, and they still got sued. The same sort of deal can happen with something like this, where everybody feels like we could go in this direction, but then maybe something changes, or maybe someone makes an executive decision to do something. So yeah, I absolutely hope so. I would very much subscribe to that, because I've very much gone down that too, to see that how they've sort of classified a lot of these. But another thing too, I do believe not all cryptos would be in the same classification. I think you're going to see them get segmented out, partially based off their utility, but partially based off of how they were created. So I think the biggest thing is I very much hope so, but I guess we'll see how they go about classing these different assets based off of how you use them and how they are created.
Right on. Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. Thank you for the moderators.
Any more?
Yeah,
can we do more?
Yeah, we could get through the rest of the people on stage if everyone asks their questions succinctly, please, and very briefly. So thank you so much, XRP, for your question. Next we have OC.
I just want to say.
Tell me you can't hear.
Yeah, can you speak up a little bit? I can barely hear you.
Yeah, Ozzy, no one can hear you. Can you speak up, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
I was just saying, man, it's just a pleasure to hear you. It's a pleasure to hear you talk. It's a pleasure. I've watched you on YouTube. My brother introduced me to you. And just keep on doing what you're doing. And my question is how are other youth that you're around, are they as interested in crypto as you are? And one of the big things we say is blockchain's the future. But I don't see so many people your age as interested or as involved in it. So what's your viewpoint from it? Like, what are you seeing on the street level?
Yeah, I think a big part of it is I think you're seeing a lot of frenzy. So a lot of people that do get into it sort of get into it for the idea of making a buck, and that's fine, but it doesn't necessarily mean that people care about the underlying technologies or the use cases or the future of them or who's going to be using them and why, and a bunch of other questions that you could ask too. And I think the biggest thing now is it's not really like blockchain's cool, but it's only cool because people are getting rich. It's not cool because people are going, oh, look at this cool, app that somebody launched over here, and there are plenty of applications that are like that. But I think the biggest thing is a lot of people are just seeing dollar signs as opposed to like broader adoption. And you see like younger people sort of into it, but I from my perspective, a lot of the people that are currently in the space are very professional, and they usually have some sort of enterprise need, and that's why they got into it in the first place. So it seems almost as if the people that are in the space trying to drive some sort of change did it because they needed to use the technology in the space to drive that change, and they kind of just naturally landed. And I see this with people that either in law, people that are in finance, other programmers out there. It seems primarily that they needed something and they ended up settling on some sort of blockchain technology to suit their need. And I think that's the reason why you'll see a lot of people in there or in that space for that reason, because a lot of people don't really, I wouldn't say don't need it, but don't really understand why you would need it. And need is of course entirely subjective, so you only need it if you plan on using it, and if you only really need it if you can't use anything else. But that's the thing though, you would essentially need some use for it to need it, and I don't think a lot of people really have a conceptualization of if they could do something with it, what would you do with it. It's more of a carried idea of I'm holding an asset as opposed to I'm holding a piece or I'm holding a piece of technology that can essentially act as a commodity due to the future value of it being significantly higher based off the mean demand of future enterprise solutions.
No doubt. I appreciate you for answering that, and like I said, it was good listening to you, man, and keep up doing everything you're doing.
Thanks. I appreciate answering these questions. Appreciate being here.
Awesome. Thank you very much for your question. Moving on to Arthur.
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, how you doing, Arthur?
Quincy, you're a blessing. So happy you're here. Thank you so much. Following what you just said, what is your favorite iOS crypto relative to the technology? And which is your favorite crypto in the ISO that you would hold for the most long-term wealth, long-term with an exit? With some sort of exit point where you could actually sell it. Thank you so much.
The answer is all of them. I know it's not a fun answer, but I need all of them. Like I need them. Like how I just illustrated, I need them all. So I can't do without one, and I can't really choose one because they all complement each other. And I think that's one of the big things too. Is I don't think there is a race going on here. I think what's happening is a dream team of technologies being drafted, and the ones that make the dream team will be essentially used for enterprise solutions. And I don't mean anyone specifically choosing this dream team. I'm just saying that people are going, I'm picking you because I need you to do this for me, and I'm picking this technology because I need you to do this for me. But yeah, my answer is all of them, because and it's not even really about selling them in the future, because I can essentially, one of the things that I like to also illustrate is while using these for enterprise solutions, you can actually use them as payment needs to execute automations on these decentralized networks. So I can actually use these tokens to broaden my applications by executing decentralized applications that are associated with other businesses to help scale my business by using those tokens and by using those platforms. platforms, and they all have different needs, they all have different purposes, and obviously different people operate on different platforms, so I need to be very, very, very dynamic in being able to accommodate that.
The impetus for the question was how you were sharing with Brad the other day and Eddie about how XRP was the crypto of the 4 favorite cryptos that you were worried about potentially retail holders having an issue with. And in my head, I was like, well, why aren't the other ISO cryptos in that same category where somehow, some way, we won't be able to hold those as well? Or you explained it to buy them. So that's why I kind of went that direction.
Yeah, that's no problem, and it's literally just the SEC lawsuit, and it's not even that I'm even worried about the SEC lawsuit. It's more of the idea of if anything's going to happen, it's going to happen directly to Ripple, and then Ripple is going to have to enforce that. And I don't think it's going to happen exactly to XRP, but whatever happens to Ripple is going to have a rippling effect, no pun intended, on XRP, and that's not something to be worried about. It's more of that regulatory framework that may be around how companies and how cryptos have to interoperate with each other, and that teeny tiny sliver of framework adds some structural risk to holding XRP as a retail holder. Now, this only applies to you if you're a U.S. citizen. If you're not a U.S. citizen, then who gives a damn? Like,
got it. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you.
Question. H, you're up. H. Final call, H.
H?
Yeah, we can come back to H. We want to move on to RAM.
Yep, we're on to RAM.
Is I here? I or J, maybe?
Hey Quincy, this is Ram here. Thanks to the moderators for setting this up. I do think this is the absolute greatest community, and there's a lot of knowledgeable people involved here, so thank you guys again. My question is, as far as, looking at the problem with Ripple, the problem in the banking system and the, transfer of money that Ripple is trying to solve here, and looking at their total supply, is it more beneficial for the price of XRP to be as high as possible for liquidity reasons, or is that irrelevant? And that stems from reading some people on Twitter that have mentioned that, and just I'm curious to get your opinion on that.
So I don't necessarily say it's high as possible, but there's going to be a mean demand that's going to set the base liquidity in the network solely based off the amount of trades that need to get executed within a period of time. So let's say every single day $1 trillion worth of trades were executed on XRP, and that could dictate the price solely based off of that. And I really do think that the price of XRP is going to be primarily dictated off of volume happening on the network as a whole, as opposed to the supply and demand economics of the exchange circulating volume. I think it's going to be more of that institutional volume, because what ends up happening is that exchange volume is going to shrivel up due to people that are in the institutions needing to buy it, and they aren't able to buy it from other institutions because other institutions are using it, so they have to buy it from essentially retail or from the exchanges. And I think the biggest thing with that is that solid volume that the institutions are using. You gotta remember, when they buy it off the exchange because they need it, it's not going back out there. It's going to go back into that fundamental volume that's going to be using to run the financial system. But I think the fundamental volume is going to set the base demand mean in the future that's going to determine the price. Now, I don't necessarily see that being that the price needs to be as high as possible, but it's definitely going to need to go to a certain price that can accommodate the level of liquidity needed in the marketplace. And this becomes a more and more of a need, and a higher and higher of a price the more money that's flowing through these networks, because more money needs to move faster. And you actually may see the price even go higher due to potential inflation fears, because it's better to sort of overdo it and be able to conduct trade than to underdo it, and then you don't have enough assets to conduct due to the inflation that's coming in. So I think you may see a sort of a overestimate in value due to trading needs and due to fears of potential inflation and what that would mean in regards to trading. And that doesn't necessarily mean that has anything to do with XRP. What it means is if I need to conduct, so many millions of dollars worth of trade, and now that goes up because of inflation, I need more XRP to do that. And it's not an XRP thing, it's more of that liquidity thing. But I think that's going to put an upward price, more of an upward price of the price of XRP because of that. And then you'll see it level off due to its S-curve because of the adoption and what's so off. But yeah, for the most part, I think that the overall price is going to be entirely dictated off the network volume mean of the demand of future utility, primarily based off of global trade.
Thank you so much. That was a very well explained answer to my question. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for asking it. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Ram. And Roderick.
Okay, thank you very much. Hey, listen, Quincy, I watched your BitTrue trading video. I did 100 XRP scalping for 3%. So thank to you, you actually made a difference. You are actually empowering people.
Wow.
So for real. So my question to you is, I want to take it to the next level. I want what you do. I want to get in that trading bot stuff. Do you recommend a newbie like me, like getting those off-the-shelf trading bots, or do you recommend actually going the Python route and building your own?
I would recommend someone who's never touched a line of code to do it on themselves than to go off and try to find some bot to do it for them. And that doesn't mean those bots aren't good or anything. It just means if you don't know how to use it, you're better off not using it at all if you don't know how to use it. And that's sort of how I feel with my bot, because my bot isn't like a retail trading bot. My bot actually really works for high volume trades. So it actually worked better if you were something like a hedge fund or some sort of investment banker, basically making millions of trades a day at that fat spread I was telling you, and then constantly ramping that up. For like, you obviously made money, so that's awesome. But I mean, obviously, I presume you're pretty intelligent, and I don't think that everybody can just hop into these things and have sort of the emotional intelligence to handle them, because this isn't this trading isn't really trading. I actually call it the algorithm I have is called the basic liquidity algorithm, because that's essentially what it's doing. It's providing liquidity to these markets, and then it's capitalizing off of these really thin spreads. But in terms of a liquidity bot or arbitrage bot or whatever, I think people should do whatever they want. I think you should be as educated as you can on whatever you're gonna do. But I think you need to be careful, because I've seen runaway effects with bots where people flat out lose everything, and it's kind of funny actually, but it's not funny, because it's one of those things where it's like, oh, I made $20,000 in a week and I lost it in a minute. Like, it's like, but it's something to definitely be like wary of. And actually, like, I'm so paranoid. I've literally created like multiple bots, and I'm so paranoid to like let them run and like me not watching them, because I've seen people totally like wipe out their accounts. And I tried putting like different like safety mechanisms. I'm just so paranoid that I typically don't really recommend it for people unless you've just got balls of steel and you're just ready to just go in and do whatever you got to do. But that's the thing, if you're doing that too, odds are you've probably done the research, you've probably done the background, you've probably done all the stuff that you would have already done anyway, that regardless of what I said wouldn't have had much of, in my opinion, wouldn't have had much of an impact anyway, because you would have already been prepared.
Right, is it in Python you did it?
Yeah, I did it in Python.
Alright, one love, Quincy, keep doing it.
Alright, sweet. And good luck. I'm glad you made money, that's cool.
H. Yeah,
thank you for that question, Roderick H.
Yeah. H, are you there? Are you ready? I see you popping in and out. Are you ready?
Hey, I don't have a question right now, but I guess have you heard anything about the QFS system at all? You're connected a lot with.
Yeah, I'm actually quite interested, because there's a lot of stuff dating back even to the 80s about quantum finance, and the biggest thing is I don't even want to call it the quantum financial system. I want to call it the quantum internet, because that's essentially what it's going to be. And all the quantum internet is a internet in which encryption doesn't necessarily exist, because all the data that resides in this internet is in, it's, what is it? I call it Schrodinger's database, because all the data in the database is at the same time there, but at the same time it's not, and it only essentially manifests itself if the key is essentially locked or unlocked to retrieve that data, and once that key is essentially that observer that essentially collapses the data into actually perceive it. And I think the entire idea of a quantum internet will essentially create almost like, I don't want to say an uncrackable internet, but it would basically bring a whole nother level of cybersecurity due to the inherent nature of the security feature of how quantum systems work. And the reason for that is, if you were trying to take over a quantum system, there's so many different things that you would have to take into account to try to even map the system, that it would be not impossible, but so entirely improbable that you would probably spend more time doing nothing than before you got a chance to actually breach a system. Because it'd be so ridiculously hard, because you're not necessarily trying to crack an encryption, you're almost essentially trying to re-replicate a key to have access to some form of data, which would be the data that you're trying to compromise. And obviously in this too, if you're able to do this in finance, you're able to do this in such a manner where people just can't hack money out of people's accounts, especially if you're dealing with like crypto or something. That could be totally cool. But in terms of like as an overall idea or concept, I'm familiar with it, and I definitely do believe that there's something that's going to come along that's definitely going to bring a quantum internet, because like I said, it's going to bring a whole nother level of security that's never been even matched before. So I do believe that's coming. I have no idea of like how that would go about or who would really come along with something like that, but I do think it's inevitable. And there's been documents even dating back to the 80s talking about the potential of a quantum, not even a quantum internet, because they didn't even get that far. It was more of like a quantum banking system, like you said before, about how you're able to manage not only assets, but you're able to manage these processing speeds so quick that you don't necessarily have lag times in regards to managing data, especially when managing database data. And I think what would be quite interesting too is, if you see this on decentralized technologies, you might end up seeing performance on technologies like XRP, XLM, and XAC and them like no other before. And I don't even mean transaction performance. I mean like somebody using a smart contract to execute a hook and being able to get performance that's so quick it's almost unmatched by any other technology we may have out there, solely because we're able to reside on a quantum internet. Now, this is all theoretical, and these are all sort of ideas, and I have no idea where this would go into the future, but I do believe at some point we're going to essentially come across, not really a quantum internet, but as we come across in more and more higher level computing, I think the idea of a quantum internet is going to become more and more of a mainstream thing. And you may see more of a private intranet in regards to quantum computing, and you may see like, the military industrial complex have a special intranet. You may see private companies have a special intranet for their quantum financial needs. You might even see it just being entirely a back-end process. But I do believe that you will see a quantum internet at some point due to quantum computers coming to fruition, and it will bring a whole nother level of security and a whole nother level of app performance that we've never seen ever. So
cool, I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks.
All right. We have actually managed to get through a bunch of questions. Again, Quincy, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. I know you're busy. Taking the time out of your day to speak with us in the XRP community. If anyone else has any final thoughts, you guys could just go ahead.
Hello, how are you? You are so brilliant, Quincy, and we're just, I think, so impressed. And, I think I'm working on a startup, and boy, I would love to just get you involved somehow, but I'm sure you're in quite the demand these days. But that's all I can think about right now, just how amazing this discussion has been. So kudos, and so glad we were able to put this together. That's my closing thought.
Thanks for having me, guys. Like, I love being here. I really love the community as a whole. Like, it's kind of funny that I've kind of like blown up now, because I've kind of always been here. XRP Bully, I was actually in your Telegram chat like a couple months ago.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I've been like floating around, so it feels very weird for me to be like, oh, like I've sort of always been here, but now like everyone's sort of looking at me now, like, but it's really cool, and my biggest thing here really is I want to talk more about the technology and the use case and get really people to. I want people to believe in their technology, but I want people to also be able to back up their technology with hard steel core arguments, almost like they're a developer that works on the technology. You know how this works, you know who's going to use it, you know how they're going to use it, and you know why. And there's so many reasons why. And I think a lot of people are kind of in it for the money, and obviously it makes sense. But there's so many layers to this that I think people totally overlook. And I just kind of want to come over here and just bring light to that, you know?
Quincy, man, thank you. You're a brilliant mind. I know the community appreciates you as a whole. I do. You know, I gotta say, all the information that you've brought has just been a blessing. You know, so thank you. I hope it's not the last time you'll be with us. We definitely want to see you back here. So let us know, and we'll make it happen, because I know we need a part 2 to this amazing conversation we just had. I'm definitely giving you a follow on Twitter. I started following you here on Clubhouse, so let's stay connected. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Just add me on Twitter, XRP Bully. You can just message me whenever. I'm so down to come on for these. I think this is so cool. And yeah, this was so much fun, and I'd love to be here again.
Yeah, thank you, Quincy. I just want to say thanks. And one other thing, is anybody recording this? Because I'd love to listen through. There's so much info. Did anybody record it, or where are they going to put it?
I'm actually recording it, and it's going to be on my channel. So.
Oh, Quincy.
Oh, good. Yay. And, Quincy, I'd love to see you on Chip's show, too.
Oh, yeah, Chip, have me on. I would love to come.
Invitation to come on the chain? Yeah, everyone, every night, 10 people in the chat go, when Quincy? I'm like, it's pretty busy, man. Let's see. We'll see.
Yeah, hit me on, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just hit me on Twitter. I would love to come on. I would love to just talk about the space, talk about the tech, talk about whatever you guys need. I love it.
We'll do that. Bring it out there.
And James as well. I know James is a huge influencer as well on YouTube, and I'd love to see you guys connect.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. Thanks for being here. I mean, you have so much knowledge in this space. I thought I was in the rabbit hole, but when you talk to a programmer, developer that is really, dove into the rabbit hole, it's pretty exciting to hear all of your knowledge, and we all, do appreciate you on here.
Thanks. I love being here. I love kind of like all the attention's been crazy, but everybody watching, thanks. Like, I kind of just started talking, and people were listening, and I started talking some more, and people started listening some more, and we got in this crazy feedback loop, and now we're here talking about talking. So.
It's so fantastic. I love it.
All right. Christian, can you close us out?
Definitely. Once again, Quincy, thank you so much for being with us here in the XRP Community Club on Clubhouse, the fastest growing XRP community here on Clubhouse. Shout out to all of our amazing moderators. Without you guys, this wouldn't be happening. It's literally a family and friendships that are being forged, and the amount of just positivity in this room is amazing. I've heard countless stories from different people. So if you're not following the room, give us a follow. Follow your moderators. We're here for you guys, for the community, and it's about just empowering the XRP community. So again, thank you to everyone tonight. A special thanks to Quincy for your time and your wealth of knowledge. It's definitely appreciated, believe me. So we look forward to a part 2 with Quincy. Quincy, before you leave, can we get you for a part 2? We'll worry about the scheduling later.
Yeah, I'm definitely down for a part 2. I'm actually I might even put together my own Clubhouse chat just to, I don't know, just to rant, I guess. I don't know. Q&A maybe. So yeah, I'm totally down to do this again. I'm totally down to everybody. Just follow me on Clubhouse, because I might even throw these together too. And Twitter, of course, and of course on YouTube if you really want to get the the real cream of the crop content. But thanks for having me, and I would love to do this again. And I love meeting all of you and interacting with all of you and being really big in the space. I definitely want to make an impact in regards to where we are in the space, but also in crypto as a whole. I kind of hate the idea that people sort of take certain technologies seriously and other technologies not, and I want people to take all of them seriously, or I want them to be want them to actually be critical, as opposed to just going, I don't like that because blah blah blah, or I don't like that because of blah blah blah. I think we could all come together, and I think we can really just create cool applications, and I think at the end of the day is what's going to create the price appreciation that everybody here has been hoping for. So
Awesome. So again, to everyone out here in the audience, thank you guys for being here with us tonight. Follow the room if you're not following. If you follow myself or Billy, we can add you as a member. So just go ahead and check out the club rules. It's all about respect, and definitely thank you guys for being here tonight. We'll see you guys on the next one. If any of the moderators have a closing statement, Billy, I'll let you close out the room.
No, I just wanted to say thank you to Quincy. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Chip, Lisa, James, Lala, for moderating. And yeah, definitely we'll have Quincy back for a part 2. We'll figure out scheduling later. But have a good night, everyone. It is late on the East Coast. I have to wake up early tomorrow. But thank you so much, Quincy, for your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody, take care.
All right, good night, everyone.
All right, see you guys later.
Good night.